When you think of laptops from the early 2000s, you probably think of these. 4x3 displays, plastic construction, dedicated media control buttons, black or silver plastic. They really are hideous, but this was the world of laptops before the sleek metal ones seen so often today. So it might surprise you to see that Apple's idea of a premium laptop 21 years ago was this. This is the PowerBook G4 Titanium, the genesis of modern laptop design as we know it. And in many ways, it was well ahead of its time, but in other ways, it wasn't. So today, we're gonna talk about it. Make sure to get subscribed, hit the like button down below, and let's get into it. In January 2001, Steve Jobs explained the flashy, forward-looking new design for the PowerBook in a way that you probably wouldn't hear it described today.
We have the most powerful notebooks in the world, but they have the sex, right? They have the sex. We want both.
Okay, Steve. Clearly someone's a little pent up about PowerBooks, huh? Anyway, the whole point of this exercise was to create a laptop that had the best of everything. Premium materials, class-leading industrial design, and super powerful internals. On stage, Steve Jobs was practically giddy with excitement as he revealed their latest creation with its 15.2-inch mega-wide screen,
15.2-inch mega-wide screen,
radically thin exterior,
1 inch thick,
and a brand new material, titanium.
Titanium. It's made out of titanium.
To really understand where Steve was coming from, though, we have to look back at what the PowerBook was like before 2001. This is a PowerBook G3 Wall Street from 1998. The G3 lineup was introduced in 1997 and updated annually through 2000, preceding the G4 Titanium. Without even diving into the details, you can see the insane difference between these two laptops just a few short years apart. The G3 screams 1990s, but the G4 could pass for a 2010 laptop fairly easily, I think. I'm curious to hear your guys' take on this. Do you think this looks as modern as I think it does? And if so, what aspects are really standing out to you as ahead of its time? In my opinion, one of the ways the G4 ushered in the modern era of laptop computing is with its display. Apple embraced a wider aspect ratio. The 15.2-inch display is 1152 by 768, which gave it a 3:2 aspect ratio that's curiously making a comeback in modern times in Microsoft's Surface products. But at the time, this was among the first widescreen laptops to say goodbye to the dominant 4:3 aspect ratio. But beyond just that, I think the showstopper was the flat, modern, sleek titanium enclosure. The display enclosure is probably the most modern part of this design. It looks almost exactly the same as the brand new M1 Pro MacBooks that just launched, flat on top with a gentle rounded curvature at the end. And look at these bezels. This is a 21-year-old laptop, and yet they're just as thin as the bezels on an M1 MacBook Pro or Air. That's truly insane. The rest of the enclosure too ushers in the modern era of laptop design with flat sides, symmetry, and clean lines. The bulbous, curvilinear design language of the PowerBook G3, and in fact many technology devices of the early 2000s, was completely rejected. The G4 looks so modern because it uses some of the same design themes that Apple has stuck to ever since. We have speaker grills on either side of the keyboard, a trackpad centered in the bottom of the device, thoughtful port placement to maintain a clean exterior aesthetic. Oh, and did I mention an Apple logo that's the right way up? Yeah, on previous PowerBooks, the Apple logo was positioned such that the owner would see it right side up when putting it on a desk in front of them. But that had the side effect of turning the logo upside down for anyone else when the device was opened. Steve Jobs even made a cheeky, non-verbal reference to this fact when revealing the design for the new PowerBooks.
You and about 1 billion other people.
It seems weird now, looking back at the upside down one, but there was a lot of debate about whether that was the right way up in the late 90s. But I think we can all agree they made the right choice, and the current orientation is the best. Although one thing that wasn't as enduring is the port orientation. On the back of the device, there's actually a nifty little drop-down door. This is pretty similar to what the PowerBook G3 had as well, but I actually really like this, because back in the day, obviously, there were a lot more ports, and so Apple thought, well, we might as well hide them a little bit. Another thing that sets the Titanium PowerBook apart from modern Apple laptops is the ease of upgradability. If you want to change the RAM, for example, you don't even need a screwdriver. Watch this. There's 2 pull tabs on the keyboard that I can pull, and it just lifts right up and off, and there's your RAM. That is certainly not something that Apple ever did again after this generation. So clearly, the Titanium PowerBook, or the TI book as they became known, was forward-thinking. This machine started the trend of Apple's forward-thinking industrial design in pro laptops, but it also started the process of limiting expansion and upgradability, even despite that really easy RAM process. The G3 PowerBooks came with 2 bays on either side that let you hot swap out components. Mine has a CD drive module in the right 5.25-inch bay and a battery in the left 3.5-inch bay right now, but you could easily pop out either one and swap in a battery on both sides. Zip drives, floppy drives, super drives, DVD-ROM, etc. Customization without any screws. Imagine that. The G4 did away with these bays, and beyond the lack of versatility, at the end of the day, the TI books weren't really all that different from the PowerBook G3 Pismo that they had just replaced, at least internally. They actually had very similar motherboards with a 100 MHz system bus and Rage 128 graphics with 8 MB of VRAM. The G4s upgraded the base RAM from 64 to 128 MB and storage from 6 to 10 GB, but they also came with a $100 price increase, so many felt the Pismo G3 was all they needed until Apple started boosting up the new G4 books. Oh, and did I mention that these things got very expensive very quickly? Mine is actually the second revision, which came out in October of 2001, so it has the upgraded 667 MHz PowerPC G4. It was originally configured with 512 MB of RAM, an airport card, and a 30 GB hard drive. And that, back in the day, would have set you back about $4,700 in today's money. Although, to be fair, this MacBook did come out during a time in which there was rapid year-over-year growth, and laptop computers were becoming cheaper and cheaper every single year. So yeah, it was $4,700, but if you compare it to the PowerBook G3 Wall Street that I showed you earlier, it's not even close. Those things very easily got up to $4,500 in 1998 dollars, which is a small fortune today. So because of this second revision, which added increases to the bus speed as well as the graphics and the G4, prices were coming down compared to previous years. The G4 was catching on. But as the G4s started gaining popularity, problems started to arise. Apple had never used titanium before, and to get the color that they wanted, they needed to paint it. This meant that very quickly customers started experiencing paint chips and scuffs, particularly around the white border on the palm rest and hinges. And those hinges were the machine's other major weak point. They have a very visually interesting design, sitting behind the machine and suspending the display with gaps between it and the bottom of the device. It's a very cool look, no doubt, but they're extremely fragile, and Apple had to really bend the display cables a lot to flex them through into these tiny spaces, which led to a whole host of problems. Pinched data and backlight cables led to dead pixels, lines on the display, flickering, and dead panels altogether. The hinges were also physically delicate, often breaking off. And to top it all off, they were astronomically expensive and difficult to repair. iFixit's guide lists 38 steps to replace the display. It's basically a whole system teardown that involves fully removing the logic board and all internal components to access the delicate mechanisms. It was honestly a bit of a mess. And it's almost misleading that this entire video I've been showing you this absolutely stunning original example in fantastic condition that even has its original hard drive still working and its original battery, which is still holding a charge. Well, this isn't exactly representative of all of the TI books that are still left out there. Very quickly, they went from looking like this to looking like this. After a few years, they didn't look quite as forward-thinking as Apple had hoped. They started to be really rather atrocious. And maybe that's why just 2 years later, they debuted the anodized aluminum PowerBook design that you might recognize because it barely changed until the 2008 unibody MacBook Pro. But to be honest, I think this design is absolutely timeless. Or maybe not timeless, because that kind of implies durability. And regardless of its problems, you can't really deny that this is what started the trend for Apple's modern laptop design. It's really amazing to look back 21 years and see things that Apple is implementing today, like the flat top and bottom. Or how about the bezels, which even Apple themselves wasn't able to replicate for another 15 years. That's how long it took them to get bezels this thin again. To be honest, I could talk about this thing for hours. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I wrote down that I wanted to talk about in this video, but I couldn't even find the time to talk about it. Like, for example, I'm running Mac OS 10.1, which, as you can see here, is, it's super early. There's a bunch of weird stuff, like the fact that there's not a dedicated volume sound, so it just uses whatever your system sound is, and it sounds really goofy. There's other silly things, like the fact that if you go to shut it down, it doesn't prompt you if you actually want to, so if you hit this by accident, it's just gone. It just shuts down. Also, look at the spinning beach ball. It looks so weird. Okay, it's also not spinning right now, but don't worry about that. It was not even 3D yet, because it was just so early. Also, this is very Mac OS 9, which this could actually run. This can dual boot OS 9 and OS 10. They're the most powerful computers that can do that. And if we go around back here, mine is from 2001, October. It's the second revision, so it has VGA. But the newer models of this that came out in 2002 actually have DVI there, which is a very useful display out connector. They also have a higher resolution display, and those things are actually somewhat capable. People still run these things with Linux on them. There's just so much cool stuff about this MacBook Pro, not to mention the fact that I actually have iPhoto version 1.0 as well as Final Cut 3. Oh my god, you just have to look at this. I'm just obsessed with this old laptop, and the battery life is actually pretty good. I've been shooting for like an hour and it's gone down by 10%. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think I should make a video in 480p on this MacBook? I mean, look at it. Anyway, those are the tidbits that I didn't find time for, so there you go. So that is one of my favorite retro Apple laptops, the PowerBook G4 Titanium. I actually bought 3 of these for this video because I just love them so very much. Let me know what you guys think about the PowerBook G4 Titanium in the comments below. Do you think this design is successful? Did you own one of these back in the day? I was a little bit young because I was, 3 when this thing came out. I'm curious to hear your guys' takes on this in the comments below. And while you're down there, you might as well like, comment, and subscribe. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video.